everybody. I want to go ahead and make this video in relations to me being raised deaf. I've been wanting to make this video for years now, and it just never felt like the right time. Until today. I now feel it's right, and so I went ahead and decided to make the video. The reason I feel like it's the right time is I really appreciate my great-grandma, and she passed away a week ago, and she's now gone to heaven and is watching over all of us. And I never wanted to hurt her feelings. Even though this video has nothing to really do with her and would never hurt her, I just didn't want to risk it and hurt her. So I decided to go ahead and make it in my experience growing up. Just a disclaimer. I did not make this video to hurt anybody's feelings. I have my own feelings. I just made this video to share my experiences with raising an individual. I want to help other people. Maybe some of you will feel offended, but that's not my goal. I hope you just watch the whole video and understand that this is my experience. I understand that we all have different experiences. But I all think that we should help deaf children. One more thing before I go ahead with my story. Just remember, we can't change the past. We can change the now. And we can change the future. Y'all may feel embarrassed. But that's okay. Just learn. Learn from your past. And know how to make it better for the future. So this is my sign name. I'm from a small town in South Louisiana. I don't really remember clearly how my family found out I was deaf. It was before I was a year old. I remember enough that it's either my parents' home or my grandma's home, one of the two. And someone dropped a cooking pan on the floor, and it was really loud, and everyone glanced over. But I was just over there, didn't even realize it had happened. Didn't scare me, nothing. And my parents were like, that's strange. So my father got behind me and banged 2 pots together, and once again I had no reaction. He was just banging it over and over, and it was really loud. But I didn't pay any mind to it. I didn't react. And so they thought that was very strange, so they took me to the doctor, and they found out I was profoundly deaf. So my parents and my grandma, they all discussed and decided that they would hire a teacher. I don't know her name, but she would come over to our house and teach us sign language, just like baby signs. I don't know why, because it didn't continue. And then I entered school at a very early age. It was Catholic school, and I was the only deaf. It was a keep in mind it was a small town. The Catholic school did not allow me to use sign language. They only made me learn oral. So I had to stop learning sign language. It was kind of unfortunate. And keep in mind, I couldn't hear anything at all, so I learned oralism. My parents, I'm so grateful for them. They never let my deafness limit me and my abilities. My parents allowed me to do anything and experience and learn on my own. It didn't matter if it was dangerous, they wouldn't stop me. They just allowed me to learn. But they still let me enjoy life. They helped me use body language and how to use a go-kart, how to build things from wood, and so I'm so thankful for them. But I struggled emotionally throughout my life. They don't understand. It was sad. When I was 13, my parents passed away. I looked happy as a kid, but inside I was struggling. I never knew how to control it. But I want to share this experience. First about my family, culture a little bit. My family was really strong, affectionate, and they would kiss me and hug me. Touching was really important to them. If we didn't hug or anything, they'd be offended. I don't remember what age, but it was little, maybe 6, 7, somewhere in there. My families and friends all came together, and we met each other on a boat, and we went into the middle of a lake. People are drinking and playing and swimming, just hanging out. I'm the only deaf person. And I'm on the boat, and I'm kind of doing my own thing. I walked around where people were everywhere, and a man grabbed me and pulled me and kissed me. I was dumbfounded. I didn't know who he was. So I ran and was like calling my parents and pointed him, and I told him that he kissed me. And my parents just laughed it. Like, oh, he was just playing. I was like, no, he like really kissed me. My parents went over, and I just felt so confused, and I didn't know how to communicate, and I just felt like I couldn't do anything. I thought kissing was a part of the culture. I didn't understand. It just didn't feel right. So I was really embarrassed. And unfortunately, the man took advantage of that. He kept on doing it more often. And I couldn't tell my parents, and I just kept on getting worse and worse. He wasn't the only one. Even women started to take advantage of me. And I became confused, and I struggled. And I became resentful towards men. I never ever hugged a man again, including my grandpa and my dad. Even though I was never touched inappropriate, I viewed all men the same, and I rejected them. And that shows that I didn't have strong communications with them. So for years I didn't hug men. And then when my parents passed away when I was 13, I didn't have a chance to hug them. I grew up a happy child. But in that situation, my feelings just flipped. And I felt like I couldn't do anything. And were my parents responsible? Yes and no. They were responsible for teaching me how to properly communicate. We all came from a small town, and we didn't know much about deaf people. So we encouraged my parents to learn. They didn't have a lot of support. They put me in an oral school and just kind of went on with life. But I had to survive through it. And now I'm mentally and emotionally scarred. Things could have been totally different if I could have understand how to communicate better. I would have saved my life in the struggles if I would have known how to communicate. Communication is key. So I encourage all hearing parents with children who are deaf. Don't be scared to communicate with them. Go and learn. I know it's hard, and a lot of times they're emotionally upset, and they don't know what to do, and they think the world's gonna end. But it's normal. They just can't hear. Hearing parents can learn how to sign. Communication with your deaf child is important. You need to know their feelings. You need to be able to support them. You need to be able to tell them what's right and wrong, so your deaf child can have the best. If you don't, they will suffer and struggle, and they won't understand the world and the future. So I encourage you to learn sign language. Another experience, I'm not quite sure how it happened, but my parents found a deaf school. I was around 12 at the time. So they took me out of the Catholic school and they put me into the deaf school. And it was 3 hours away from home. And I stayed in the dorms there, and I'd come home on the weekends. And I'll never forget the day we got there. I felt in over my head. It was cultural shock. Everybody was signing all around me, and teachers and everything. Everyone was signing. And I felt so scared. I didn't know any sign language. It made me want to go home. I later learned how to communicate, and I just loved it. I'd go home on the weekend, and I'd try to communicate with my parents and tell them a story. And once again, the communication would be limited, and I couldn't tell them the story. And my sister would always say, "Oh, your voice is so loud, can you just be quiet? Like, you're giving me a headache." And so I didn't have a lot of socializing, and so that really hurt. Because once I finally understood my identity, and I was able to communicate, but when I went home, it didn't exist. Communication did not exist. I wanted to tell my parents and I couldn't, so that was really hurtful. I don't understand why they didn't want to learn sign language. I don't know why. And then about a year later, my parents passed away when I was 13. So many things could have been so different if my parents would have been okay with learning sign language. They didn't have to learn all the signs, just a little bit. So when I would go home, I'd be able to talk to them. I don't like choosing friends or my family. So I really encourage you, friends and family, if you have a deaf person who is in your life, learn sign. Don't let that relationship grow. Another story. Once my parents had passed away, I moved to my uncle's house, and the school gave me books and movies to help them learn signing, and I was so excited. At the time, I was still learning sign. So I showed my aunt books and stuff. Once again, there was a barrier. And once again, the communication was just limited. And then I ended up moving with my dad's sister. I tried to teach her, but we just ended up writing to communicate. It was okay that we could write, but it wasn't the same. We just made sure that we were okay and everything, and that's it. There was no chit-chat or anything. You know, I felt like I could communicate at school, but then when I'd come home, I didn't have that. And so my emotions were everywhere. My aunt always told me would always say no to me if I wanted to do something. And that really hurt me. My parents always let me do stuff. My aunt was a little bit different. It really kind of hurt my feelings. She always told me I can't do this, I can't do that. And so I ended up leaving. Everything could have been so different. If they were willing to learn some kind of communication. Not just me playing by myself, but all coming together as a family. I'll always be close to my family. But was always being hurt more and more. So I really want to encourage you all. If you have a deaf person in your family and they start distancing themselves, you feel it's not right, ask them why. Ask them what's wrong. learn sign language and get involved with their life, their family. Don't leave a deaf person behind. Another story I have. This was probably the most toughest experience I ever went through. So my family and my contacts with them became less and less. And we would contact through email. And that was better than nothing. But I wanted more than that. Every time I'd go to visit them, I would have to see my grandma. Because she was so much different. She was really a special person. And I knew she wanted the best for me. And when I was a baby, I was learning sign, and I talked to my grandma, and we would always make fun of learning sign, and we would laugh and just be silly. And I really enjoyed that. But she was older, so she couldn't really remember a lot. But that's why she was different. She did her best. She came from a small town, there was no support, so it was hard. I don't blame her. I loved her till she died. So when I would go visit her, she would always show me all these pictures, and for years, until about 2 years ago, she stopped writing me. And she couldn't write because her hands became shaky. And I understood that. But my aunt told me that she started to have Alzheimer's. And it reminded me and it made me think, how are we going to communicate? And it was hard. But I'd go to visit, and we would try to communicate, and it hurt me. As her time came closer and closer, my aunt told me, don't go visit her. And I was like, why? I thought my aunt said it would confuse her. And that really just hurt me. And the communication was totally different. We had to use a third person. But I want to talk about being deaf and growing up. My heart was just breaking all the time because I couldn't communicate. I wanted to help her, and my aunt would say, don't confuse Grandma. But I love my aunt. And I don't blame my aunt. I don't dislike her. I'm just trying to help you guys all learn from my experiences for the future. So her time and her memory started to go and everything. And about 2 weeks ago it hit me. I can't remember. I don't remember how long ago it was, but as our time got near, my grandma wanted to die at my aunt's home. And wow, that broke my heart. My aunt, she wrote with me through writing. And I know my grandma loved her. My grandma loved me. Hospice would come and they would follow up on her as she approached death. Everyone's just sitting there, talking, crying, being supportive, comforting each other. And I just sat back with all my needs, and I got nothing. I kept looking at Grandma, and I wanted to hug her and just take her in, but I couldn't communicate. I couldn't communicate with my own family. And that hurt. And even worse, a social worker came. I don't really know why. Maybe to check on things and make sure everything was okay as the time was approaching. But a lot of people came. And I could just feel hurt. I felt like no one could see me. That they didn't give me the emotional support I needed. I wrote back and forth to my aunt. But it was so hurtful, and I don't blame her. She's the only child, and she was now all alone. And I'm the only grandchild. She needed support, but I also needed support. People helped her, but I didn't get any help because I had limited access to communications. And I went outside to get some fresh air, and I was pacing back and forth, and as time got near, she passed away. I'm happy today that she's in heaven, that she's in peace, and she knows my heart, my feelings, and the truth. Everything could have been so different if people in hospice and the social worker brought an interpreter or thought about me as a deaf family member who needed emotional support. Just don't leave me out of it. So I encourage you all, if you have a family member who passes away and you have a deaf person there who you know was close, be there for them. Make them feel, console them. Because it's going to be way harder on them. If you can't handle, get someone who knows signing. Or someone who can help them. Don't leave them in the dark. They'll become upset and bitter, and they'll lose respect. So I really encourage you, it's never too late. Try to think about how you can meet their needs and how they feel. I love my grandma. So I know that my grandma would have felt upset if I would have made this, and I didn't want to hurt her. She would have been hurt by it. I love her. I have so many different experiences and stories. But this is a good one. And it's to help you understand deaf people better. Understand how they feel. Understand what you need to do to get them motivated and to learn how to communicate with them. Communication is the most important thing in our life. That people can communicate and console and be normal and live better. But it's all through communication. So please take up sign language now. It's never too late. Don't be embarrassed for the past or feel like you don't know. That's okay. The past is done with. But learn from it and change the now so you can change the future. It's so important with deaf children. They need us the most. So hopefully this will help you all. But at the same time, I encourage you to change now. Understand better and reach out. Thank you so much for watching this video. And I love my family no matter what. I love you all.